I think the best way to think about hip hop and how it's evolved over time is to think about Japanese cars, because these two things have had a very similar trajectory in American culture. Now, it's hard to really pin down exactly where hip hop comes from musically, but it emerges from kind of a mixture of different kinds of black music. So you have disco, soul music, funk, reggae. This is the early to mid 70s. So, Motown is dying off. Music is becoming more kind of groove oriented. It's more simple and, dance music. Now, at the same time, it's kind of hard to pin down exactly when Japanese cars first come into American culture. Technically it's happening in the 60s. You're seeing like a Datsun or like an old Toyota. But at the time, Japanese cars were kind of like an underground phenomenon because people were still driving. You still drive a Ford. It was still the big three. Now, hip hop and Japanese cars, they really have their moment and they come into being in the late 70s. And both of these things happen, I would say, out of necessity. It's right place, right time, and this is the answer. Now, late 70s New York City, you got to think this is Fear City, as they say. The city government is nearly bankrupt. And, it's 1977. It's the blackout. The Bronx is burning. New York City is in rough shape. But it's still New York City. So go to the Bronx. You go to Harlem. Kids are still kids. They still want to have fun. So even though the city is in rough shape, kids are getting, you pull out some cardboard. You break dance on the street. There's still kids going out with the, spray paint, and they're doing graffiti at night, and they're finding new ways to express themselves. Budgets are being cut, so people aren't learning instruments the way they used to. But DJs are going through their parents' record collection, and they're finding little break beats. And they're putting together kind of a rudimentary DJ setup out of little belt-driven turntables or whatever. And they're having fun with it. They're getting creative out of necessity. Block parties. They go to the park and they do the thing where they plug into the lamppost or whatever. And they have a party. People grab the mic and you have fun. It was more of a fun era. At the same time that New York City was going through this, partially related to this, was that there was a recession happening in America. Jimmy Carter was an ineffectual president. People did not have faith in the economy. And there was a gas crisis. People had to line up for gas. Gas prices went up. This was the first time in American culture when Americans started thinking about fuel efficiency. That's when they started realizing, maybe I shouldn't drive this, V8 Ford or whatever it was. And I should probably downsize to something that is more efficient for my needs. That's not going to kill me at the gas pump. That's when the Toyota Corolla emerges. And that's when people start thinking like, you know what? I don't need to drive one of the big three cars. I can start thinking about an import. Now, as you go from the 1970s into the 1980s, that's really when rap blows up pretty fast within 4 or 5 years. Now, once you get to 1984, 85, that's when you get Run DMC. Run DMC was the Toyota Corolla of the time. It was huge. Adidas. That's when you get LL Cool J. That's like the Honda Accord of the time. And all of a sudden he's worldwide. He's got no shirt on and he's dancing on top of a car. At the same time, though, you got to imagine, as Toyota and Honda are becoming more dominant, the big three car companies, they got caught off guard. They didn't see any of this coming. In the same way that the rock bands of the late 70s, early 80s, they didn't see rap music coming. They were in denial. That's when you think about, Van Halen, and you think about, Kiss, and all these sort of cheeseball hair metal bands and stuff they're all watching this new kind of music rise up in the same way that Ford is seeing like, wait, people actually want a well-designed, fuel-efficient car. And they weren't ready for it. As you get further into the 80s, now you're getting NWA, massive. You're getting Eric B. and Rakim. And this is when people start realizing that this is not just a trend. This is when people realize, oh no, Toyota is going to be around for a long time because they're actually making very good cars. Now, fast forward a little bit. Everybody basically agrees that peak years of hip-hop and Japanese cars, 93 to 96. This is when Japanese cars stop being merely a commuter car. This is when you get Japanese sports cars. This is the ultimate expression of Japanese design. This is when you get the Toyota Supra. This is the Mazda RX-7, Acura NSX, Nas, Illmatic, Wu-Tang Clan, 36 Chambers, Dr. Dre, The Chronic. This is when form really meets craft. This is when it's not just about inventing a new thing, but about perfection. This was when you have the best rappers and the best producers, and everything is wide open. This is when it's DJ Premier, Dr. Dre, The RZA. This was Tribe Called Quest. This was, the Ghetto Boys, whoever. And it was everything that was coming out at the time. It was just banger after banger because this was the evolution. These were people who grew up in the 1980s. People who drove the 1985 Corolla, and it was nice, but they realized, no, we can do better than this. We can make Japanese cars sleek and sexy, and everything is it's not a Porsche, but it's more modern than a Porsche. Toyota Supra that is the top of the top. Now, as you get further into the 90s, I'd say late 90s to early 2000s. This is really more of I'd say the Honda Civic era. This was the Acura Integra Honda Civic custom kit. And in rap, this is Outkast, Aquemini. This is Lauryn Hill, Jay-Z, Blueprint. I describe this as being not so much inventive, but custom. In the same way that guys would get the Honda and they would put the spoiler on the back and do all the Nas kind of stuff with it, all the Fast and the Furious shit. That's when that came out. And that's what, Outkast was. We're not inventing a whole new thing, but we're doing it in our specific way. And it was perfect. That is 5 mics, top of the top stuff. Now, as you get further into the 2000s, at this point, rap music, hip-hop music, and pop music, pop music just becomes hip-hop at that point. That's when that's the Neptunes era. That is the Neptunes producing for Britney Spears. That is Justin Timberlake singing over Timbaland beats. I mean, it's when, in this era, by the time you get to the 2000s, people aren't even thinking about Japanese cars as being Japanese. Toyota was just what you drove. That was how ubiquitous things became. People stopped thinking about rap music as being a trend because at that point it's been 20, 30 years. So this is just what popular music sounds like. This is what a reasonable car looks like, is a Nissan Altima. Now, as you get further into the 2010s, this was when, This is when you start hearing about rappers talking about cars that are like it's like a Maybach or like a Bugatti or whatever, a Lambo, whatever Floyd Mayweather cars you're driving. The difference between those cars and the cars I was talking about earlier, the Supra, the Acura Legend, is that when you see somebody in a Bugatti, that's not even really a car for driving. That's a car for looking at. It's a car for standing in front of. And it's not even attainable. These are billionaire cars. These are for billionaire Europeans. And they make like 10 of them. And one of them is Floyd Mayweather. And then everybody else is just renting the other 9 cars. But the difference is, the Toyota Supra, it was an aspirational car. It wasn't cheap. But a regular guy who worked a regular car could buy the Toyota Supra, could buy the Acura Legend. A regular guy with the car is not buying a Lamborghini. He couldn't even dream of that. That's a car you look at on Instagram. That's not a car you want to drive. And that's what rap music has become, for better or for worse. There is still lots of good stuff happening, and there's still great artists, Kendrick, whoever. But overall, it has lost a lot of its, relatability. In the same way, it's like, of course, they make a new Corolla every year. They keep making Honda Civics, and they look nice. And I'm sure mechanically they are very sound. But it's not like it used to be. Also, Kanye fell off when he went to Europe. I'm just saying. When Kanye West was still hanging out in Japan before he started doing like Louis Vuitton creative director stuff, that's when he was still Kanye.